I think we're live. It says we're live. I'm alive.
You look half dead.
I feel 3/4 of the way dead. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the individual co-hosts and do not reflect the official policy or position of the Firearms Radio Network and or their employers. Viewer discretion is advised. This is especially true on live shows. If you like what we're doing and would like to help support the show, visit patreon.com/afteractionproject. If you'd like to throw us some free support and appreciation, we would greatly appreciate a 5-star review on iTunes. We are still the least rated podcast on the Firearms Radio Network. So if you guys could jump on there and then change that, it would be awesome. Or not. It's up to you. Tonight's episode, just like every episode, is brought to you by the Firearms Radio Network. Be sure to check out the other great podcasts on the Firearms Radio Network by visiting, you guessed it, firearmsradio.tv. Tonight, we are joined by Ron Carter of Save the Second. We're going to be discussing all the good things that are going on over there, the good fight that he's been helping fight, and kind of just see where that conversation flows. Be sure to get your questions going in the comments down below over on the After Action Project Facebook page, the YouTube page, wherever you are at watching this. And before we get much further into the show, go ahead and share this out with your friends, family, your loved ones, those folks that like guns, love guns, hate guns, love the NRA or hate them. Get this going so we get good discussion going on down there. And I think that's it. I think I'm done rambling for the first part of the show. Ron, why don't you talk to us a little bit about yourself and what Save the Second is and what led you on this journey that got you to where you are, and ultimately, the highlight of Monday night podcasts that start 9 minutes late, the After Action Project.
Oh man. Well, first of all, I'm friends with all of you guys. So this is just awesome. I love hanging out with you. So I started off in firearms at a very young age. I grew up in the middle of nowhere, Arkansas, DeWitt, Arkansas. And so, of course, if you're not fishing, you're hunting. And if you're not doing either of those, you're probably watching football. So there's not a lot of options in southeastern Arkansas. At least there wasn't when I was growing up. So I was introduced to firearms early on. I joined the Arkansas Army National Guard when I was 17 years old. So went to basic training before I was 18. And man, I tell you, so that was a weird time, right? So I got exposed to some very interesting firearms during that period. Although my job, my MOS, wasn't anything special. And I didn't serve long in the Army National Guard. I got out, decided to have a family. I was going to college during that time too, in Texas of all places. So, moved from Arkansas to Texas and, met a few awesome folks in Texas that just kind of steered me in the right direction. And then I left college, got a job, moved to Colorado Springs, and I was pretty much taken out of firearms for several years until some of the tragedies started happening, the mass murders. And as a family guy, right, I got married, I started having kids, right? As I started to see some of these instances of mass casualty, killers, thought, well, my gosh, I need to be prepared. I shot expert, in the Army, hey, might as well, buy a handgun and try to carry it around. So I started that. I started carrying in 2015 or 2014, one of the two. I took my first class with Robert Butler with Knaz Tactical Group, first formal class outside of the Army. And my gosh, I was just blown away at all that I had missed and all the misconceptions and myths that I had. A few months later, I decided that I wanted to one-up the game. Of course, I liked firearms and hunting growing up, so I wanted to revisit that. But not only that, I wanted to work at a gun shop. So I started volunteering at a gun shop, and I later went on to be a manager for a brief period of time at a gun shop. And while I was there, I said, hey, I want to be an instructor. So I, just kept progressing up the ladder to where I am now, where I instruct occasionally, not as much as I did in 2018 and 2019, but I still do instruct quite a bit. I had the pleasure of instructing my son on Saturday. Oh my goodness, that was fun. He's 8 years old. Well, I'm sorry, correction. He says he's 7 and 3/4, right? His birthday's coming up at the end of April, so he'll be 8 in April, 7 now. We had a great time on Saturday. It was awesome. Now, as I became an instructor, of course, for those of you that have listened to, say, like Tatiana Whitlock or well, the vast majority of instructors that have been, on After Action Project, well, it's a common theme that anyone who wants to be an instructor cuts their teeth through NRA instructor certifications. So, of course, that's where I started off. My first credential through the NRA was a range safety officer, and that was through Robert Butler. So, stuck with him for a little while, and then I branched out, and I've taken a few classes, instructor level classes with Judson. And my gosh, Judson has really got me squared away. So I'm in many cases, I'm a product of you guys, taking all the information that you have and hopefully I'm able to, be a sponge and absorb as much as I can, but very much a a reaction to what you guys have decided that you wanted to do in teaching folks. So yeah, that's me. Now, because I was an NRA instructor and I saw that there was a lot of problems within the NRA, thought, oh, well, okay, maybe there's something that I can do to help the NRA and whatever problems it has, hopefully find the solutions to those problems. And that came to really a head just after the April 2019 NRA annual meeting in Indianapolis, where Oliver North resigned or abdicated the throne of the president of the NRA. He's still on the board of directors currently. But of course, there was so much drama that really came to a head at the April 2019 annual meeting that I said, well, hey, I might be able to be, a problem solver. What are the problems? And so I started a Facebook group called NRA Members for Accountability. Got in contact with some really awesome folks that, had some viable solutions. What are the problems? What are the solutions? And so we started working towards those solutions. And then, of course, we had to become a 501c4 because, well, trying to do petitions, for example, is not cheap. None of us are rich. I want to be rich one day by, winning the lottery. Problem is I don't, play the lottery. So, I'm a poor guy. We had to do something. And so that's where kind of we started. And a lot of guys give us grief, for saying that, we're not NRA members for accountability. We're Save the Second, but there's a story there. There's a reason. Yeah. That's kind of the gist of it all. Yeah. Oh, and thanks for having me. Oh my gosh. Yeah, of course. Andy, I love you. Oh my gosh, Jeremy, I still haven't got to shoot with you yet, but that's coming. And Judd, you're awesome, man. So yeah, I'm very delighted to be here. Thank you for having me.
I know how you feel about me, and keep your personal feelings to yourself.
I've got some bananas upstairs, buddy. I'll write your name on a few.
Right on.
Yeah, so definitely awesome having you on, man. We appreciate you taking time out of your day and your life to join us. So you mentioned a couple problems in the NRA annual meeting that happened last year. Are you able to talk a little bit more about some of those problems that came to head? I do remember seeing through, different social media channels, the NRA made rather quick work of sending out cease and desist letters to different folks and individuals and subpoenaing all kinds of different stuff. Are you able to discuss some of those problems or talk about the meeting and really the environment and what was the straw that broke the camel's back that made folks say enough is enough. Let's get active and fix this stuff.
Oh man, I could talk all night long about that. And there's so many different facets of the story. It's not just one thing. It's not just one problem. It's a systemic, habitual problem machine that just doesn't stop. Many people like myself were absolutely up in arms when Chris Cox came out late 2018 and said, well, Congress should fund ERPOs or red flag logs. And well, of course, red flag laws are a Fourth Amendment violation and a Second Amendment violation. And I mean, there's no constitutional reason why you should have a red flag law. So a lot of people were up in arms about that. Of course, Chris Cox was then the NRA's Institute for Legislative Action chief, right? The big guy, at the Institute for Legislative Action. And so many people were just absolutely devastated, really disenfranchised with their NRA, having their NRA previously say, not 1 inch. And then all of a sudden over here, like, actually, we'll just give you the whole mile. Why not the football field? So there's a massive disconnect there. And then, of course, you had the bump stocks, where and very similar time frame. Wayne LaPierre and Chris Cox. So Wayne LaPierre said, well, these bump stocks are, they're dangerous. I think the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives should, re-look at their determination letter that these are not machine guns. That's what he said. And of course, today, if you have a bump stock, well, you're a felon. Okay, there's no do not pass go grandfather law. Federally, that's a machine gun, and it was made after 1986, so you're a felon. Yeah, how's that for the NRA, looking out for your rights? So, I mean, that's kind of the beginnings of where a lot of people were having issues. Now, of course, you could go further back in history, and you could say that the Hughes Amendment in 1986 was, supported by the National Rifle Association. You could say that, in 94 during the Clinton assault weapons ban, that they were, kind of involved and kind of had support for that. So there's a lot of folks that have issues with the past, but if you're looking at the present, those problems they are monumental. They're not in line with what the NRA founded in 1871 was supposed to do. Beyond that, if you look at how the NRA operated during this time period, carry guard was really the thing that was the catalyst for all of this, because carry guard was such a dramatic dumpster fire from the beginning. They didn't use NRA instructors. They said, no, we're going to go get a Navy SEAL. And they're like, ooh, there's one that we can pay, several $100,000. Why don't you come over here and write curriculum for people that have never handled a handgun? It's a great idea, right? Yeah, Mr. breach, bang, and clear underwater demolition expert, trying to teach, your grandmother how to carry a handgun. Just, oh my gosh, there's a disconnect there. But beyond that, carry guard was also an insurance program that they kind of stole from USCCA. If you remember 2017, I think it was 2017's annual meeting, NRA annual meeting, the NRA disinvited USCCA because they were about to launch carry guard. So that was, what a shady move. And then, of course, we find out that in New York and in New Jersey, the way that they had written those policies, those insurance policies, was actually against those state laws. So, I mean, just talk about a multi-million-dollar dumpster fire from the start. And that's just some of the high points. I mean, we could talk about Ackerman McQueen's NRA TV, which commonly, talked about, border walls and topics that have nothing to do with the Second Amendment. So, I mean, that's other examples as well. But I think the average person that's trying to keep aware with what the NRA has done and is doing is really shocked and horrified at what the NRA is right now.
So, Ron, in NRA's defense, or I'm sorry, carry guard's defense, which I in no way actually defend on any level other than this, USCCA did actually steal most of their stuff from the NRA in the first place. So, no, that is interesting. If you ever go look at the USCCA curriculum, they actually have the exact same photos in some of their slides.
Wow, a little plagiarism, huh?
Yeah. So,
yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that USCCA is the most premier insurance provider out there, but that was just kind of the history of that drama, and that drama is continuing today. Sure, I get it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't think a lot of folks really follow the NRA that closely to realize the underlying problems that there are within the NRA. I think a lot of folks use it as I'm gonna support them financially through my membership, and now they're responsible to fight for my rights. I don't need to fight for my rights because I'm paying the NRA. And it was kind of, I don't know, maybe I'm cynical, right? But it wasn't surprising to me to kind of see and follow it along, right? Because then it's what was surprising for me is that, or what still surprises me is that Wayne is still running the show, right? That there has not been, a resolution or a correction there. And if we look at Carry Guard, the training program, right? Not the dumpster fire that the insurance program was. It at first glance, and when I remember, seeing it early on, I was like, this is a marketing. The marketing was figured out, and then a curriculum was built behind it. Right. So they led with the marketing. This is what we're going to do. We're going to charge $450 for a class or something. Right. And then they don't even create a problem. Right. They just created the marketing, and then backfilled it with the curriculum, and thought that, if we bless it with the NRA stamp and we brand it as Carry Guard, this is going to be something that lines our pockets. And then the insurance program, in and of itself, I mean, if you looked at it where it's a true insurance premium, and they, financially speaking, they would be better off if its members were found guilty, right? It was just, it was disheartening for me to see some of the folks that jumped on the Carry Guard bandwagon and started, like, the insurance side of it, and started promoting it and peddling it. And there were some folks that I had respect for that I had lost a tremendous amount of respect for, and it didn't affect them one way or the other. I wasn't students of theirs. I was little more than subscribers and followers on social media of them. But it was like, it's about the money and not about the people.
So I'm going to take a page out of Judson's playbook real fast. I wrote this little sign before I got on the show. It's a great leader inspires greatness in others. A great leader inspires greatness in others. Has Wayne LaPierre inspired any NRA member to lobby? Have they, as he inspired them to start their own organizations, statewide organizations, and get involved? Has he inspired them to become instructors and to teach? The only thing that I'm seeing that he's inspired anyone to do is give him more money. Honestly, now that may be highly critical, and that's truly my feelings. Now, of course, that's not exactly what Save the Second is out to do. We're not out to make sure that Wayne leaves tomorrow. Wayne is very much a product of his environment, and so if you change that environment, he can't function anymore. If the board of directors were doing their job, there would not be a 31-year CEO/executive vice president at the NRA that has had the track record that he's had. There has to be accountability. And so the NRA board of directors is supposed to enforce that accountability in the executives. And instead, they've rubber stamped just about everything. Now, I say just about everything. Guys, there's 76 seats on the NRA board of directors. Okay. Currently, there's 73 because there's right now 3 vacancies that cannot be filled. But we're talking about 73 individual persons, right? And, I've had conversations with so many of those board of directors, and, it's interesting to see where they're at, not only in regards to say, like the NRA, but also their journey with firearms. I mean, there's some that, honestly don't shoot, and granted, there's also some that don't even show up to board meetings, which if Save the Second has done anything, accomplished anything, we were instrumental in creating a director attendance policy. We were hoping for a bylaw amendment, but hey, we'll settle for it at least in a policy. We're going to hold them accountable to that policy. So if Carl Malone still hasn't shown up to a board meeting, in April, we're under 50 days away now. If he hasn't shown up then, we're going to say, hey, President Carolyn Meadows, you going to do what the policy says anytime soon? So I mean, that's kind of what we're doing, where we're at. But still, man, there's so many problems within the NRA. Now, also, there are a lot of good things in the NRA. I don't want to just sound completely, critical. All right. I mean, it's easy to be a critic. It's more difficult to find those solutions, and also to give praise and credit where credit is due. Man, I got to tell you, Graham Hill with the Disabled Shooting Sports, holy smokes, man. That committee is small. And this is his first year as the chairman of that committee. NRA has 37 standing committees, by the way. I got to sit on his committee meeting this past January, and oh my gosh, doing great stuff. The Range Development Committee, they're rewriting the whole range book, and that looks, from what I've seen just in the beginnings, I mean, it looks brilliant. It really does. So there's good stuff that the NRA does, and when we should definitely praise the good stuff. Now, the bad stuff, I mean, it just, it takes one rotten apple to spoil the bunch, and that's exactly what's happened.
Yeah, I agree with that totally. Not to get into too much of my personal business, but as a manager, I've had a difficulty with one of my employees, and he's a really, really good employee, right? Does everything he needs to do, does his job, works hard, but then there's these couple little things that we can't get right. And that was a conversation I recently had with him. Everything you do amazing is getting overshadowed by these things that you're doing wrong. And you can have 10 great things versus one bad thing. And that one bad thing is really going to get you. And, I'm back and forth on the NRA, much like a lot of people that are following. I know we need the NRA, but at the same time, I really hate the NRA right now. Yeah. And it's really tough. And we talk about Wayne LaPierre. Okay, let's get rid of Wayne LaPierre tomorrow. Okay, let's say that happens. Who's going to replace him?
Right.
Willis Lee, the guy that's going to do the same thing that Wayne LaPierre is doing?
Or worse.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And there's always Joe DeBergalos, and there's a couple. Who was Ron, you can probably answer this question. Who was the guy that came up with Kerry Guard that recently got terminated at the NRA?
Josh Powell.
And
we still do not have a reason for why he was suspended and resigned. Now he had sexual assault allegations against him, one that was settled out of court with NRA member dues and donations. So if you renewed your membership this year, probably your donations went to a sexual harassment suit that, the NRA executives try to keep under the rug. That's really nice, right? Oh man.
So I will tell you that, you mentioned Graham in your previous, comments, and he is getting my bullet vote this year. And I will, if you don't mind, Ron, since you're the guest, can you please explain the bullet vote, and then I'll turn it back over to Andy because I kind of interrupted him on his question to you.
Cool, and I'll hit that. I'll answer a little bit more about Jeremy because Jeremy answered or questioned like the subpoenas and what's going on there. So I'll touch on that a little bit, and then I'll get back to Andy. Sorry, Andy, and sorry, Judson.
No, it's totally my fault. I'm trying to work on that.
Okay, so bullet voting. If you have an election that has a lot of candidates that presumably will be elected, then if you're looking at the stats, who gets the most votes? Well, in this case, the top 31 candidates on this year's ballot for NRA Board of Directors that's currently out now, those 31 are going to be elected regardless of what you do. So if, for example, my candidate that I really like isn't exactly popular, right? I can merely vote for that one candidate, and that one vote might, bring him up in the rankings and everybody else down. So that's bullet voting in a nutshell. Now, and again, I mean, this year, 31 people are going to be elected out of the 38 that are on the ballot, running on the ballot.
39.
Well, okay, so 39 is on the ballot, but Kevin Hogan, he decided that he would bow out. So even though his name is on there, he's already said that he's not going to be a director. So you have that to contend with as well.
Yeah, I only interrupt because I have my ballot literally sitting right in front of me. I just didn't want it to be off on the record that it was incorrect. That's all.
No, and please correct me. Continue to correct me if I get something wrong. But yeah, so Kevin Hogan, you can look at his name on there. You can vote for him all you like. He's not going to be a director because he doesn't want to be. So keep that in the back of your mind. And now we also have the likelihood of further resignations on the board of directors, and those resignations would be filled with the runners up. So I mean, there's a true potential for after April, everybody that's on that ballot being elected or serving on the board of directors because of resignations. We can't even fill the 3 vacancies currently after exhausting the pool from last year. So that's a huge problem, and that's something that we're going to be working with after April to try to get as many candidates that meet the qualifications and are interested in becoming an NRA director. We're going to try to help them get on that ballot. So if anybody's listening to this and you say, wow, I've been an NRA life member for over 5 years, and you'd like to be an NRA board of director, right after annual meeting, we're going to start trying to help folks out to do that, because we have to have good directors. We can't have somebody wanting to pad their resume, getting on there, which, by the way, there's several on that ballot right there in front of you, Judson, that are merely there just to get another check mark on their resume. They do not care about the NRA or the state that it's in right now. And
Agreed.
That is sickening to me.
Agreed.
Now, sorry, I get a little worked up. I'll calm down. So, Jeremy, talking about the subpoenas, my gosh, man, 8 months ago, I couldn't tell you what a subpoena was, and I was subpoenaed. Now, I was subpoenaed as a result of the ongoing lawsuit between the NRA suing Ackerman McQueen, and they were trying Ackerman McQueen. The NRA is alleging that Ackerman McQueen leaked documents from the NRA, and they're trying to find the source of that leak. And it just so happened that I was caught up in one of the first volleys, I guess you would say, of that information being leaked. Who knows where the heck it came from? It was freaking, torrent. So I don't know. It's none of my business. Now, what's on those documents has been shocking to many of us. If you've heard of Wayne LaPierre's dress suits, he spent $274,965 on dress suits, over $250,000 in dress suits. And guess what? He didn't pay for that out of his wallet. He paid for that using an Ackerman McQueen American Express card. So with member dues and donations, yes. And now that's one of the reasons why the New York Attorney General is launching their investigation, or rather launched their investigation about this time last year. So we're going up on almost a year of the New York Attorney General investigating the NRA's nonprofit dealings and whatnot. So it's very likely that the NRA will lose their nonprofit status as a result of stuff like what those leaked documents showed us, the absolute waste of member dues and donations. And yeah, that unacceptable, 100% unacceptable. Now, the New York Attorney General over the summer had subpoenaed 90 current and former NRA board of directors, and then they issued more subpoenas. I think it was around November. So they were in the hundreds of depositions collected. You also have the lawsuits, NRA versus Ackerman McQueen and NRA versus Oliver North, that have, had subpoenas issued. And the one legal representation that the NRA is using right now, which is ironic, and I'll explain that just a little bit briefly. William Brewer III is the lawyer that's at the right hand of Wayne LaPierre right now. And ironically enough, he had donated, we found out through opensecrets.org, he had donated to Beto, he had donated to Hillary, and several other very staunchly anti-gun folks. And beyond that, he was disbarred in the state of Virginia. He cannot practice law in the state of Virginia because he was doing some shady stuff. He was leading witnesses and so on. Now, I'm not a lawyer. Go look those up if you are, or that's neither here nor there. The point is, the guy that's doing all this, that's issued probably now around 200 subpoenas, in just the lawsuits, and then responded to the depositions of the inbound subpoenas from the New York Attorney General's office, the DC Attorney General, and the New York Department of Financial Services. I mean, we're talking about 300 plus subpoenas and depositions here, man. It's been it's been nuts. And we found out just recently that the NRA had subpoenaed more just recently in the ongoing lawsuit between Ackerman McQueen and the NRA. NRA subpoenaed the Cherokee Nation and several others that were working for Ackerman McQueen. And it's wild, man. And going back a little bit further, this is also something of like a soap opera, like Days of Our Lives soap opera, because Ackerman McQueen and the NRA, Ackerman McQueen, of course, was the advertising agency that did, all the media, NRA TV, Dan Aloche, Coleon Noir, all that. The owners, or the CEO of Ackerman McQueen's son was, married, somebody in the NRA. And so you have this whole back and forth. I mean, it's just, I don't know if it's a Jerry Springer show or if it's Days of Our Lives, but regardless, it's ridiculous and unnecessary, and absolutely somebody should be held accountable on the executive side of the NRA, because this happened under their watch. Yeah, sorry. Now, Andy, now that I said all that, please, Andy.
It is circle back now.
What's that?
Oh, I was just saying, let's do a complete circle back now.
Yeah, Aaron Krieger from We Like Shooting.
I'm trying.
Yeah, so to step back about 10 minutes, but it's still a good question, I think. As we talk about these things, great things happening from the NRA, horrible things happening from the NRA. For me, it's been a really tough balance, because one day I'm like, you know what, I'm a life member. I'm going to continue to be a life member. And then there's other days I'm thinking, how do I just get rid of my life membership at the same time? Right. So what would you say, Ron, to somebody like me? Because I know I'm not the only one out there, but what kind of advice would you give us to, how do we maintain the track of the NRA, to stay in the NRA and actually hope for some change in the future?
Oh man, that is an excellent question. And it's one that I still debate about, right? I mean, I helped found a 501c4 to fix problems in the NRA. And all I want to do is go shoot IDPA and instruct. Like, I don't really care about any of this. I just want this dumpster fire to be done with, and the NRA to be strong, relevant, effective, and accountable to the members. So, I mean, that's what I'm wanting. How we get there is, unfortunately, only by members like yourself, the NRA voting eligible members, the lifetime members, or the members, annual members that have had 5 years of annual membership consecutively or greater. Those are the persons that can show up at the members meeting on April 18th, 2019, or correction, 2020. We're in 2020, right? In Nashville, Music City Center. All right. So now the members meeting is not like it was in years past. If you do any sort of history, you'll find that in 1977, there was a revolt. At the time, there was a guy named Harlan Carter who had been in the NRA and then was essentially fired. And he came back at the members meeting with, several hundred of his supporters in Cincinnati, and they wrecked house. And at the members meeting, they recalled, 30 something people, and then installed new people, and then closed the door behind them. And by the way, if I remember right, that particular members meeting went from 10 a.m. to 4 a.m. All right. Now, I'm not saying that we can do that now. In fact, I know that we can't, because since then they've said, ooh, we probably don't want to have this members meeting coup once again. However, we can introduce resolutions at the members meeting. Now, not only that, okay, so let's say, Andy, that you can't go to the members meeting for whatever. I would encourage you to, because I think great things can happen, especially if the vast amount of voting eligible, pissed off NRA members show up to fix their NRA. But if you can't, keep that life membership for next year, when we can vote for persons like, for example, Jara Hutchinson had expressed interest in being a board of director. And who knows, man, we might have another 50 candidates on the ballot that are thanks to the efforts of life members, and have those folks elected. And of course, the board of directors they're the ones that can change the course of the NRA. They can remove the problems. They can make accountability a thing again, right? Make accountability great again. So it's only going to come from life members. And now it sucks, in between now and then, we're probably going to see more dumpster fire. We might see the NRA eventually even shuttered, but we will never know if we could have been that change that saw the NRA become amazing, if we just say, screw it. Hey, member services, I don't want a membership anymore. So, that it sucks. It's a terrible answer, but I think there's still hope. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. It may not be big, but there's something there.
Yeah, it's an interesting life we live in, lifetime we live in right now. If we look at the NRA, everything going on with the NRA right now, we look at Donald Trump. Trump does amazing things, and then he kind of says some anti-gun things.
Yeah.
Not too long ago, we had, the Republicans had the House and the Senate and did nothing. And then we're in this lifestyle that we're in now, and we think, okay, well, maybe we're about to get the House and the Senate back and Donald Trump, and man, something hopefully is going to happen. Maybe the NRA is going to do something amazing next year. I don't know about you, Ron, but I'm not getting any younger, man, and something needs to break.
So a point to that. You guys had Tim Knight on a couple shows ago, and you know, I love him. I love listening to him. He was on the Gun Collective on their podcast a while back, and he spoke at length about the proxy system, right? You know, like I'm giving the NRA, you know, my money, you know, so that they'll go and represent me. You know, if anything's got to change, it's got to be that. We have to be the change. We have to be the ones that show up at our state capitals. We have to be the ones that write our senators. We have to be the ones that introduce bills. I was just talking to Robert Butler, you know, with Kanawha Tactical Group, and he's trying to, you know, create a bill here in Colorado, introduce it in the next session, so that the NRA isn't the only instructor recognized group in the states. So that, you know, say you have other certifications that you could teach concealed carry through other entities. So, you know, he's being that change. And my gosh, you know, we can hope all day long, but at what point do we say, screw it, I'm going to take the bull by the horns and do it myself? Yeah.
Yeah, I think, sorry. You know, one of the things that, you know, I think Andy and I and Judson, we've advocated for, we say, no, keep your membership, right? Remain a member of the NRA, because it does work on some level, right? Because the fact that the NRA has, you know, X amount of members, that can create some fear, instill some fear in some politicians' minds. Now, I think with the NRA frankly, weakening their stance on the Second Amendment is at some point that's going to turn. You know, especially with, you know, the NRA coming out here and conceding and saying that the tool, right? The argument that we've had is it's not the tool, right? The gun doesn't pull the trigger. The handgun, no matter, regardless of what type of handgun or firearm is used, that has no bearing on the actual crime or event. It's the person behind the trigger. But then you have the NRA come out and say, well, maybe the tool does share some responsibility. And that completely undermines the biggest argument and the strongest argument that firearms owners have, right? Because it's not, right? And then we go into quoting statistics about hammers and all this other stuff and golf clubs. But, you know, if you're an NRA member and you didn't write do not promote on top of your membership form, right, you're going to get phone calls and it's like, hey, Wayne LaPierre needs $23.95 to fight the good fight. We're going to give you a knife and a duffel bag. Right. It's one of the things that, you know, I've said, hey, until Wayne LaPierre is gone, I'm not giving you guys any money. I'll keep my membership going, but I'm not going to contribute to your ILA fund because, frankly, what legislative action have you guys taken? Right. And I'm surprised. Now, I haven't seen it, probably because I've put on some blinders to the NRA, but I'm a little bit surprised that they haven't taken more credit for the Virginia success. And maybe that's because they're smart enough to realize that they would probably be burned at the stake if they try to. Yeah. Right. So that's kind of my, you know, there's no legislative action going on. It's right now it's in such a, from, you know, my perspective, disarray and really trying to put out fires with the Ackerman McQueen stuff, the carry card stuff, you know, all this other stuff when it's just like, hey, how about you do what you said you were going to do, and that's you fight for our rights. Like you stand up for you stand up for our rights, right? The Second Amendment and the civil rights that kind of fall under that. Instead of over here trying to create a marketing program, you know, there was a discussion in one of the groups that we're all in about instructor credentials and this, that, and the other. And you know, the NRA is brought up, USCCA is brought up. At the end of the day, you know, I think USCCA is a great marketing program with a decent curriculum behind it. You know, I've seen some of their medical stuff that kind of gives me pause and say, well, okay, yeah, you guys are still marketing first and then education second. And I think the NRA had seen some of the success that USCCA had with that, and they tried to emulate it and copy it. But I would really like to see the NRA get back to, you know, standing up for the Second Amendment, stop giving inches in football fields to the other side, and work on their education and training program, right? Because that's the one that, hey, the NRA is the one organization that has continued to provide training and education for everybody, right? And, you know, recognizing kids getting a hold of guns. So the Yeti Eagle program, you know, the hunter safety program, all these other programs that they do, getting back, focusing on that stuff, stop buying Wayne suits and fancy houses and stuff. I think we'll be moving in the right direction.
So, Jeremy, can I segue off of what you're talking about there, and then I'll turn it back over to Ron for his thoughts. For the NRA members out there, or those that are thinking about becoming an NRA member, just understand that your membership dues go 100% to education and training. All of the legalese stuff
if you're an instructors, if you're just a regular member that wants to become an annual member, that goes to the general fund. But if you're like a student or you want to be an instructor, that goes to training education.
Okay, thank you for correcting me. I just wanted to clear that up, because it's not all, you know, membership dues are not all, you know, funneled straight to Wayne LaPierre's bank account. That's the only point I wanted to make.
No, not straight. They don't go straight there. They were laundering it through Ackerman McQueen.
Oh, okay. Got it.
So Wayne LaPierre would buy a fancy suit, or Ackerman McQueen would buy Wayne LaPierre a fancy suit, and then they would bill the NRA for said fancy suit plus markup. That's what, you know, I don't know, you know, that's not fact or whatever. Here comes my cease and desist letter.
Right.
So technically, Ackerman McQueen was the education and training publisher.
So, you know, Jeremy, you just talked about the legislative stuff and then training and education. I'm right there with you with, you know, education and training is paramount for the furtherance, the expansion, the tomorrow of the Second Amendment. Because if, you know, this generation that we have right now never gets, you know, education on, you know, the benefits of firearms, the sports, the uses, your constitutional rights, they never get any of that, well, then it means nothing to them. Right. And so they'd be so much more likely when they turn 18 to say, yeah, let's ban it. Vote for the candidate that you know wants to get away with those rights, because those rights don't mean anything to us. So, yeah. And I think we've seen it, too, in the past several years now where there's such a scrutiny on media that changes that culture. Right. So if I know through education that this handgun on my hip isn't going to sprout legs and go kill people in Chicago, well, you know, I might see through quite a few of the articles and news stories that I see and read and listen to. So education and training, I think, ultimately is the answer to the preservation and expansion of the Second Amendment. Now, the legislative side, where we are right now in the legislation, the NRA is the only gun rights group in America that has the size of a lobbyists that they have. That, you know, GOA might have 15, 20. You know, the FPC has a few in California. I mean, they're getting bigger, right? Second Amendment Foundation has a couple, but, you know, the Institute for Legislative Action, the NRA Institute for Legislative Action is the largest lobbying group, you know, for Second Amendment rights in the United States, in the world, right? So what they're doing and how they're doing it, it's hard to say. I think as I've been introduced to, say, Todd Rathner, I had several conversations with Todd Rathner. He's on the NRA Board of Directors. He's a lobbyist himself. And so I've had several conversations with him, and I've begun to understand their world a little bit more. And it's a world that I absolutely despise. I do not care about buying politicians steak dinners and cigars and drinks and whatnot to have their ear. I hate that. I absolutely hate that. Now, can we accomplish our legislative objectives by having dudes do that? Maybe. I hate that that's the system, but maybe that is. So, you know, I think we aren't privy to so much of what's going on behind the scenes, and that leaves us to speculation to the conclusion that, oh, well, they're just mucking it up really bad. And also, Andy and I had this conversation I think it was last week actually, or maybe the week before, where in some cases the NRA is merely playing damage control.
Mm-hmm.
And that damage control, it sucks and it looks like a compromise because it damn well is, right? If you're in California right now and there's, a new bill that's going to, ban anything that has a primer, well, the NRA might say, let's ban the ones that have large primers. We'll keep the small primers. And they'll say, oh, okay. Well, I mean, we know that in California, that crap is going to pass anyway. Well, there's no amount of current grassroots activism right now in California to change the fact of where they are and what's going on. They're playing damage control. It sucks. It's a losing strategy, but what are the alternatives? I mean, do you literally have, a state like California going through and ban everything? Now, I kind of think so, honestly. As when I've read Neil Knox letters that his son Chris Knox had compiled in the book, I think that maybe so. Maybe they should, the NRA should just say, screw it, go ahead, go wild, ban everything, ban pellet guns, ban paintball guns, ban staplers that shoot a little staple out, because if that happens, then you might have the people of California say, oh, this is crazy. People are going to jail because they had a staple gun.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's kind of where I'm at. But then again, you're in states like here in Colorado, right, where we have the magazine ban. Now, Colorado has pretty decent gun laws, with the exception of this magazine capacity limitation. And honestly, it's arbitrary. It's unenforceable. And it doesn't really matter because, I mean, their grandfather, we've got, mags at the wazoo that's over the 15 round capacity. That's not the same case elsewhere. Like, for example, and even in Colorado with the ERPO, the emergency risk protection order in Colorado is so severe. It was written so severe that now one of the sheriffs that was outspoken against ERPOs was served in ERPO thanks to an inmate. The inmate called in an ERPO, an emergency risk protection order red flag, on the sheriff. Now, I kind of wish, at least in that instance, that somebody had come in and done that little compromise, right? And I feel dirty saying that. I really do. I feel like I need to go take a shower.
You should.
Oh man, I took a shower a while ago. I need another one. Ugh. No, but I don't know. But there's some sort of happy medium, and I think it's all case by case, scenario by scenario. There's no one perfect answer, and so the Institute for Legislative Action is doing that, just kind of what they can get by with, especially with their hands tied behind their backs monetarily because of the failed leadership that has wasted now over $100 million. We heard from Wayne LaPierre at the winter board meeting that just the NRA's, the New York Attorney General's investigation into the NRA has been a $100 million hit. And he wasn't talking about what he spent. He wasn't talking about his $2.2 million paycheck in 2018. So, it's hemorrhaging money out the wazoo. And so maybe the ILA is hurting. I definitely know that the training and education side is hurting. Now, still the guys that are working there have done some good stuff. They revised the basic handgun, curriculum and books and kind of updated it. That's nice. And they kind of have School Shield going, where it's not merely a embezzlement campaign. All right. And I say that jokingly. School Shield is doing good stuff, but that's almost entirely Leo law enforcement officer. It has nothing to do with your average 110,000 NRA instructors. So yeah, there's stuff that could be better and should be better. Now here's kind of the silver lining. Dwayne Liptek is on the board of directors. Now, he was previously the chair of the the Training and Education Committee. Now, he was removed from his committee assignments because he said some I don't know, some things about Wayne LaPierre's hairstyle. I don't know. But he and several other directors were removed from their committee assignments because there was some beef in between, you should be loyal to Wayne LaPierre, go F yourself. And yeah, that was the disconnect. Apparently he was a part of the naughty list, as he put it. And regardless, he's still doing awesome stuff. For example, he brought in 1,000 PMags to the NRA's rally just a few days before the January 20th rally in Virginia. The NRA did their own thing. And by the way, they did their own thing because if stuff actually popped off on, the 20,000 people that were there on Virginia's lobby day, well, they didn't want to be associated. They wanted to be a little bit higher and tighter and cleaner and have their nose clean of any potential problems that could incriminate them. And of course, the FBI did arrest a few people that were, making plans to kill people at that rally. So there was a legitimate threat, and the NRA was kind of, removing themselves from the potential problem of that. But Dwayne Lipstick said, screw it. I'm going with 1,000 PMags. So he's still there. He's doing great stuff. And if there's anybody that I can get behind on the board of directors right now that could be a good replacement for some of the executives, or especially who would be the president of the NRA, the board president, right? Not the executive vice president / CEO, but what Dwayne Lipstick, man, if he could become the president of the NRA and clean house, I think he would do so responsibly. And he's kind of the guy that I can see bridge the gap between pardon the insult to anybody that would take offense to this, but the FUDs, and the gun culture 2.0 crowd. Dwayne Lipstick is that guy. He certainly is. So yeah, that's my 2 cents. What do you guys think?
Well, going back to talking about, should we just say screw it and let it all go? And I'm kind of the same way. Sometimes we're trying to find that happy medium sometimes, right? Or most of the time, I'd say. And if you look at California, you look at New Mexico, Colorado, we've always said with the Second Amendment, how do you defeat this? That's the same way you eat an elephant, one bite at a time. So small little anti-gun laws every legislative session. But what happened to Virginia? Hey guys, let's throw it all on the table and let's see what sticks. And I think that's what happened, and enough to push people to Virginia, to where how many 20,000 people, I don't know, that was there.
I think it was more.
Yeah, I agree. There was such estimates there, but there was a lot of people. And that's the biggest it's ever happened, even in Washington, D.C., right? So in a way, I'm kind of the same way. Like, yeah, let's keep doing what you're doing. Now, I'm not a whole Boogaloo 2021 guy and all that stuff. Is there potential? I think there absolutely is some kind of form of potential, but bigger than that potential, in a way, I'm kind of like, yeah, let's keep throwing these gun laws at us, and maybe people will get pissed enough to actually do what you're talking about in the beginning, Ron, is we can't just pay our dues and go on Facebook and scream about it all the time. We've got to get involved. We've got to talk about this stuff. We've got to get to some meetings. We've got to get to legislative session. If you can afford to go to NRA annuals, do it, because we've got to wake people up. And I'm hoping that things are getting better, where as you always say, things have to get worse before it gets better. And I'm hoping we're getting towards that worst bottom, to where it's like, all right, yeah, it's time to fight. It's time to get up and get off our seats and do something. So this guy that you're talking about now, maybe he's the one. Maybe he's our golden ticket.
Well, at least within the NRA, I think he is. Dwayne Lipstick. Of course, he's the CEO of Magpul, right? So, I mean, dude, got Magpul galore back here, and I think he's a legit guy that could definitely bring about the change that we need. He's a reluctant leader, which I like even more. If anybody says, "Hey, I want to be the president," well, I don't think very highly of them. But yeah, I think he's definitely somebody that I would wish could be in that position of leadership within the NRA. Now, let's go back just for a second, because that's an interesting thing. If let's be hypothetical, if in Virginia, every bill that they had on the table, if every one of those passed and there was civil unrest, would that be playing into the Bloomberg strategy? Yeah, I mean, he spent so much money in there, and mainly just to criminalize or demonize people that have guns. And so if those people that were legitimately fighting for their rights did so violently with those firearms, would that be the escalation that he needed to try to, for example, I don't know, what, impose martial law, if he was, the elected, president or whatever?
Right.
Yeah. It's scary, man.
I think there's a possibility of that, but also the saying goes, birds of a feather flock together. And we see Virginia, and you see it go that south. It may be that spark to light that wildfire that everybody's talking about all the time. And of course, obviously, none of us want this to go to that far.
God, no.
But it could go either way. I think it would be a good rhetoric for Bloomberg to use. Like, yeah, look, there's those violent NRA members. You guys keep telling us that all these mass shootings and not one NRA member's been one. But boy, they're awfully hardcore when now they're in civil unrest, and look at the position we're in. But the other side of it is we've got to something's got to give one way or the other, and that's exactly kind of what we're saying is, do we want it to go to civil unrest? No, but do we need to get people up off their seats to the point to where we don't get down to civil unrest? Yeah, we do. And where's that fine line? I don't know where that line's drawn. What do you think, Jeremy?
History favors the victor, right? So if our side wins, we were the righteous ones, right? And then if gun owners lose, then we were the tyrants that Bloomberg warned us about, right? I think to kind of circle back to a point that Ron had made with education and training, and if we look specifically at California, I think it's the lack of education and training, right? That now we have a generation of people that don't understand the importance of the Second Amendment, and then there are gun owners, right? We forget that there's a large, there's a percentage of gun owners that don't necessarily support the right to own an AR-15, right? They don't understand why a civilian needs to own an AR-15. And they're gun owners, right? They're not anti-gun. They just don't see the purpose of it. They don't see the harm in government saying, no, we can't have this. So it's one of those things that I think the NRA and, our side of the deal has dropped the ball on the education and training side of things for such a great length of time that we're up against the wall. And now we're having to fight these fights that, if we would have if we would have front loaded, that effort, that side of things a generation ago, we wouldn't be in a situation now where people don't understand why a magazine capacity is ineffective, why an assault weapon ban that was tried. We had a 10-year ban on assault weapons, right? Under the Clinton administration. It did not work. The Clinton's team put a study together, and they said, no, it did nothing to reduce violent crimes in this country. It was largely ineffective in saving lives. And now you have politicians, right, here in New Mexico, they just passed the red flag law. And she said, if it saves just one life, it's worth it. And I said, well, how about, can we look at other life-saving measures? Like maybe we figure out how to put armed security and protect the most vulnerable people in our city, in our cities, right? In our schools, right? Like our children. Why aren't we protecting them? Instead, you're going to put words on paper and expect it to prevent the person that's willing to go into a school and shoot up a whole bunch of innocent people. You think words on paper is going to stop that guy from doing it, carrying out it? No, hell no, it's not. Right. But we're at a point in time where we have just gotten so far away from, self-protection and taking that responsibility of protecting ourselves and our loved ones and wanting to hand that over to the government. Then now people say, yeah, Jeremy, you don't need to own a handgun. Why do you own a handgun? Are you crazy? How many times have you needed your handgun to save your life? And it's like, man, I haven't needed my seatbelt. I still put it on every day. So I think, I would like to see, I think as a whole, our community should double down on the education and training side of it, getting people educated on that and trained with firearms and the safe, effective use of handguns away from politics. Right. I think what Maj is doing in the inner cities, where he's going out and he's educating people on
It's huge.
Yeah, like, hey, if you happen to find a gun, this is what you should do with it. This is like, you might be around people, like no judgment, right? You're going to be around people. Like some of your buddies are probably going to have guns. Here's how to be safer around those, right? So he's out there really trying to save lives through education and training. And I'd imagine there's a certain level of empowerment that his students receive after taking that class. And it's really hard to convince an empowered person that the tool that helps them feel that empowerment is evil, right?
Right.
It's really hard to convince a woman or a man, right, that the thing that allows him or her to protect his or her family from evil should be prohibited. They should be prohibited from owning that, right? You can't tell that to somebody who's empowered. And I just think, the conspiracy side of me thinks that, what was it? The Art of War. To control your population, you keep them divided and dependent, right? So a government that wants to rule its citizens, you're going to keep them dependent upon yourself. You want them to depend on you for healthcare, maybe. You want them to depend on you for your personal protection and safety, maybe. So maybe you don't allow them to have the tools that they need to defend themselves.
Roadways, transportation, how the stores get stocked. The snowball keeps going to the point where you realize, like, heck, if coronavirus gets crazy around, the United States, what could close? I mean, we got people going out that have never thought about prepping before, and they're actually going and buying up all the bread at Costco because they're preparing. Yeah, toilet paper.
There's no toilet paper. There isn't any paper towels. There aren't any Lysol wipes at Costco. My wife told me today. I'm like, what in the hell? I'm like, man, it's coronavirus. Like,
meanwhile, I think it's 82% more likely as of right now, 82% more likely to be struck by lightning than contract the coronavirus. But yet we have this reason to prepare, to be independent, to make sure that we can take care of ourselves. Yeah, it makes me wonder if a lot of these people that are going through that and like legitimately looking at what happens if Safeway is, barren for a few weeks. What happens if my water is shut off? What happens if we don't have, heating, in the house? There's people that are looking at that now, and they might be coming to us pretty soon and saying, hey, can you teach me about this? And oh man, that's where I'm like, you bet I can, man. Get all your friends. Come on. So that's an opportunity, I think, for us, but I do like where you were going with Maj Touré's inner city work. And honestly, I'm going to steal it from Judson, or better yet, I should tell everybody what Judson tells everybody at the end of the class, right? End of class is, he explains his mentality of him teaching a few guys, and has this pyramid, and so he taught a few, and they taught a few, and they taught a few, and this multiplication happens where, he has inadvertently influenced thousands of people.
Yeah.
And man, if we have that drive and that motivation to really train people and educate them, and well, it's a domino effect. They're going to go and train their friends and loved ones, their kids. I'm training my son this past, Saturday on, just 4 rules of firearm safety, making sure it's fun. And, he's going to train his kids and maybe his friends. My daughter's going to try to do some competition shooting this year. So she might want to bring along a friend, and it's a domino effect. We just got to continue that domino effect and continue going after it, and with or without the NRA's help.
Agreed.
And that's the work that needs to continue. It's disappointing to see the NRA not get behind that stuff, right? Instead, they got $110 million to fight the New York Attorney General that they wouldn't have had to deal with if you were just running things above board the way it should have been ran, and really caring about the people that you tricked into thinking you care about them, right?
Oh, 100%, man. And hey, where's that at again? A great leader inspires greatness in others, not wastes of freaking money, our money.
I love it.
It's so what is so talk to us a little bit more about Save the Second specifically, and what are some things that you guys are working on? I know you mentioned you had a policy passed for director attendance, which might not seem like a big deal to folks that are listening, but understand that there wasn't a requirement for board of directors to attend board of director meetings, which if these are people you're voting for and you're legitimately voting for, if they're not showing up to, I guess, kind of speak their perspective on, I mean, that's what you did, right? You voted for these folks to take up your fight for you, right? To speak on your behalf. And if they're not showing up and speaking, right, why do they have the position? So what are some other things you guys have going on, and how can, and then follow that up with how can our listeners help support that mission?
Well, you know what? I'll go straight to that, because ultimately we're just grassroots. You know, we started as a Facebook group and then grew into this, and now we're trying to get as many NRA members engaged and active in their NRA as possible. So right now, you can go onto our Facebook page and look at who the 76 and 76 director is. It's hashtag 76 and 76 if you go into Facebook, you know, the pound sign 76 and 76. So the deal is, with those 76 seats on the board of directors, before the next board meeting, there's 3 board meetings each year. Before the next board meeting, we go through the list and we say, hey, you have a voice in your NRA. You can contact your NRA directors. Here's an email address that we have for this director. Today is director such and such. Tell them your thoughts. So that's what we're first of all doing to try to get members engaged, because if they can influence the board of directors can change the NRA. So just being active, right? Now, we do have 5 goals. Save the Second has 5 goals. You just mentioned director attendance. You know, we accomplished that. There's now a policy in place so that in the 149 years of the NRA history, now directors have to show up, or else there's consequences, which is nice. But regardless, we'll hope that those consequences actually come to fruition. So we wanted a smaller board. It's going to be difficult to see how we're able to implement that. The vast majority of nonprofits have 8 directors or less. Wounded Warrior Project has 8. There's several huge nonprofits out there, and very rarely do they have any more than 15 or 20. NRA has 76, and it used to be a lot larger. But we're saying, hey, let's cut that about in half. Let's say 31. 31's a good number. That's what we're proposing. It's going to be difficult to see how we pass that, but I think that's one of the keys to make sure that we don't have a bunch of randos that we're voting for that get on the board and then do nothing. And in the case of this year, the loyalists to Wayne LaPierre stacking the deck and trying to get their friends into the board of directors. So halving the board, that's a heck of a start. Beyond that, term limits. It seems wise to me. We've got a few directors on there that have been on the board longer than I've been alive. Okay, that's a problem. I'm not saying that age is terrible. Hey, if you're 88 years old, well, by God, more power to you. Carry on. Maybe you ought to pass that torch, and maybe you should have passed the torch 50 years ago. I don't know. I'm just saying. Okay, so that's one of the goals.
Hey, Ron, real quick before you move to the next question, I listen to a lot of talk radio, and there's a lot of talk right now about term limits, right, for our government too. And the drawback of that is when you have term limits, what would you say the term limits would be for the NRA? 4 years, 8 years?
We're saying 12.
Okay, 12. So that'd be a lot better. Because I'm hearing like 4 years for the government, and the problem is now you develop no seniority, and there's never any senior people in the board. So that was going to be my question for the NRA. With no seniority, the board is going to change so often and so fast with the NRA. Then how is it going to stay to where we're going to continue to kind of keep the Second Amendment and keep it Second Amendment based? Well,
keep in mind too that the NRA board of directors has changed massively this year, and no one has had an issue with it. Right? We've seen an unprecedented amount of director resignations, and nobody's worried about it. And in the past 2 board meetings, in both, only 54 have shown up. 54 directors have shown up. Now, also, the board of directors is not Congress. Okay, if you're out of the board of directors, guess what? You can you can still work with the NRA. You can go be hired into the NRA. You could go, on the legislative side. There's tons of more ways that you can, contribute to the NRA. It's not merely through being a director. There's Andy Lander, who's with Save the Second. When he was, in the training department, he wasn't a director, of course. Did that mean that he didn't do great things? Absolutely not. Just the opposite. Even I don't think he would have been as effective or as influential as a director as he was as an instructor. So,
agreed.
Now, take that with a grain of salt. There is a time and place where we need directors to be there for more than a few years.
So, Ron, I'll tell you one thing that I'm on a local board of directors here. It's a small school, no big deal, nothing to be famous about. But I feel like the powers that be in the executive branch of the NRA don't want to go below, 76 or half of that even, because they can actually establish a quorum over email or phone and pass bylaws and with only 20 people, So if they had to actually, establish a quorum with, say, 12 and 5 of them weren't available, that could be a problem for them. So they are able, because of the size of the directors, they are able to make changes in not only bylaws but also policies on the fly. They can create a quorum just by reaching out to the core.
Right. They can be nimble.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, the problem that we've seen is that's not been used for the good of the NRA.
I understand.
And that's the problem which is why ultimately we're saying, hey, 31 is a good compromise, right? I mean, if you can't get a quorum with, 31 directors, then something's freaking wrong, because that's still one of the largest, nonprofit boards of directors in the United States.
Agreed.
So yeah, that's where we're trying to find that happy medium. And like I said, like in the last two, director board meetings, there's only been 54 out of, 76 and then 73 in the January meeting that could have attended. So, come on, there's a lot of fat that needs to be trimmed here. Now, of course, I mentioned a smaller board, term limits. We got the director attendance, member engagement. Let's talk about that real fast. You get emails all the time, hey, donate here. NRA is going to shut down, support ILA right now, and so on and so forth. When was the last time that you got an email that said, hey, these students needed to be taught, or here's a class, or here's how you can attend the director meeting, which, by the way, in the bylaws, it is the right of the member to attend these director meetings. I was one of the only ones, in September to attend. There was me, Rob Pincus, Andy Lander, and a couple others that attended the board meeting. But I mean, just a handful of members, and we have that right. We can do that. We can be present and have our voices heard and actually get something done, by God. But yet you're not hearing that.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to go to that meeting, but I booked my ticket to Alaska. And
you did.
Yep. Yeah.
And now also something to consider, in the previous director election, only 6% of voting eligible NRA members voted. That's 94% that threw their ballot in the garbage, that aren't engaged at all. And they're clueless and they don't know. Matter of fact, if you go into the comment section right now and you say that the NRA, if you go into the NRA groups, that are on Facebook, and you say, oh my gosh, guys, the NRA is in danger of being destroyed legitimately, you'll probably get a few comments like, oh, darn libtard, fake news, blah, blah, blah. People are completely oblivious. And when you confront them with the reality of what's actually going on, their first reaction is disbelief. And when they say, that's not believable, well, it's got to be fake news, and this has got to be some propaganda that I'm hearing. There's 94% presumably of voting eligible members that are in the dark, have no clue whatsoever. So that member engagement is one of those goals that we have, to try to educate members and get them literally engaged, get them motivated, get them going. And of course, working with training and education is one of those facets, right? That we all know about as instructors. And so, yeah, that's to me, that's the big one, because if every one of the NRA members were up to speed right now, buddy, I guarantee you that, changes will be happening overnight. But,
absolutely.
Yeah, we're not seeing that.
Yeah, I agree too. I don't like using the term too much, but the whole FUD mentality, right?
Yeah.
I am for the Second Amendment, but I can't tell you how many times I've seen people say those bump stocks are stupid and you guys are fighting for them. And and a lot of people don't get it. And let me just say quick, kudos to Ryan Kleckner, Trigger Words, another radio podcast. Amazing. The bump stocks are stupid. They are a novelty. They are waste. Maybe a little fun. I don't know. I don't even have one, but it's by the method of habit, right? They changed the definition of what an automatic rifle is. If you can change the definition to make a bump stock illegal, what stops them from changing any definition to make anything illegal?
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Andy. You're kind of roboting a little bit, but I think we can still kind of get the point. And if you did have a bump stock right now, you'd also be a felon. So there's that.
we covered that, or Ron covered that earlier, that it's a felon now, or you're a felon. Wow, I messed that up. You are a felon, and it is a felon if you have a bump stock. But these people that's talking about right now, they are not on board. We were joking in the pre-show. Half the NRA members at least don't even probably computer or even on the internet. And that's where we've got this information out. So Ron, mostly Save the Second, all that's online. How do we reach those people?
Yeah, so if you want to reach us, Facebook's an easy way to do it, because I'm on there like all the time, like, at least 18 hours of the day, usually. So you can reach me there. Save the Second's Facebook page. We also have a Friends of Save the Second Facebook group that you can get in the conversation with. Our website is savethe2a.org. Save the number 2a.org. Your board of directors, man, on our website, you can go into Take Action and look at the board of directors, each one that's currently up to date. Matter of fact, I need to change a couple of things. I've got another email address to add to it. But, current contact information for all of the 73 current board of directors. Man, you will probably have some petitions going along after annual meeting. And, of course, the members meeting, April 18th. If you can be there, please be there. That would be so huge. We need every NRA member that is concerned about their NRA at the members meeting, if at all possible. Yeah.
How do we reach those people that don't have internet?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about.
Oh, you give good information. So let's share it. Let's get both.
All right. So the people that don't have internet, where are they at? Are they at your church? Are they at the range? Are they, occasionally, at the diner down the street? Do you have conversations with them at the gun shop? Those sort of things. Gun shops, obviously, you see a lot of stuff, and obviously it's not entirely social. People go in there and like, hey, I'm just waiting around because my 4473 is, being processed and the next check is coming back, and, and then they're gone. Right. So I don't know. Those are places that you could talk to people, and especially if they're wearing an NRA hat, right? If they're wearing an NRA hat, just go up and say, hey man, notice you're a member. I'm a member too. So what do you think's going on, man? What do you think the NRA is going to be like in a year? Ask them those questions, and see if they're aware of what it costs for Wayne LaPierre to, buy his dress suits with member dues and donations, coming through Ackerman McQueen, and his travel, his luxury travel, in his private jet, which is ungodly. I mean, it's ridiculously expensive, and I can't even wrap my head around his paycheck. Yeah. So, I mean, there's so many facets that you could ask, and you could ask them about bump stocks. You could ask them about ERPOs. You could get those engagements with those people face to face just by asking them a question. If you notice something like a hat, like an NRA hat or a bumper sticker, I don't know, maybe you're getting this Starbucks or something, and you see a NRA sticker and say, hey man, I noticed the sticker. I'm an NRA member too. Yeah, cool. So what's up? that may be a way to reach those people that don't or aren't connected within the same social media circles that we are or have internet.
I'd say the folks that you run across wearing the NRA hat, that's the guy that needs to hear that conversation.
Absolutely.
I've got a couple of NRA hats here in a second. Do you guys want to role play?
Yeah. Do you wear them in public?
Oh God, no, no. I do have a carry guard hat that I use as a target, and I intend on wearing that to the members meeting this year.
Nice.
Oh, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
That is awesome. Nice. Well, I think Andy, Judson, did you guys have anything else, man? I think we've covered just about what we can cover without getting another, going into it for another hour or two.
No,
Yeah.
I just want to, my closing comments are, obviously always, stay trained, get out there, get out there and, have fun with your friends. And, we have to save the second. There's no doubt about that. And I think that I will leave everyone with this is go find Ron online and, go find Rob Pincus and Andy Lander and all these guys that are backing this. And reach out to them. These guys are not, Tom Cruise celebrities. They want to hear from you. They want to talk to you. They want to hear your voice. And then my final words will just be, in order to avoid the coronavirus, wash your hands.
Drink Dos Equis.
Oh man, I'm gonna have a drink here in a second. It's gonna be great.
You don't want coronavirus, don't drink Corona.
Yeah, I just want to thank Ron for coming on. What he does, and just to kind of piggyback off of what, reach out to Ron, reach out to these guys because they're doing good work for us. That's not an easy position that Ron has put himself in, and he's volunteering to do this for free, guys. So this is not an easy job. I wouldn't want it. I always follow and I always read and everything that I can learn from Ron that I get tons of information from Ron and his group just for this information. So go follow that group, reach out to Ron or these guys, get information. And if you have a chance, thank them. Because from me to you, Ron, I appreciate everything you're doing. Your job is not an easy one, and I wouldn't want it. So thank you for what you do.
Hey man, it's an honor. And hey, right there, a great leader inspires greatness in others. I'm not trying to be a leader, but if I can inspire greatness in you guys, by God, I'm going to try that. Also, it's not sexy to try to save the NRA. It's way more sexy to get the sub-second, draw to fire from concealment. So if you want to, have some of that sexiness with me, hey, we can do that at IDPA. You can find me at Pikes Peak Gun Club every third Sunday of the month in Colorado Springs, shooting IDPA. So, Andy, if you get the opportunity to come up here, of course, I think Judson mentioned he's going to be in town one of those weekends. We should shoot together. That's way more sexy than trying to save the NRA. And thank you so much, Andy. I love you. I look up to you guys so much. I've learned so much from you, and I'm going to continue to learn a lot from you.
You will, and we continue to do the same from you. But I also want to. I know I said my last thing was the whole coronavirus joke, but Ron, you are a leader. Do not ever doubt that. You are in the front, on the battlefield, in front of your soldiers, taking the hits. So don't ever think that you're not a leader. You are doing more than 99% of any other NRA member, and we thank you for that.
That makes me very humble, but I know unfortunately what a bad leader looks like, and so that makes me want to get a freaking tattoo on my forehead of this. Right, a great leader inspires greatness in others, and I didn't want to be a leader, but by God, I'll be the best damn one that I possibly can be, and that responsibility is huge. So yeah, thank you, Judson.
110% all the way, buddy.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate you guys jumping on. Definitely, Ron, for everything that you're doing for Save the Second. I've myself have kind of at times given up hope, and then Save the Second came along, and it's invigorating and inspiring to see folks that are actively involved in trying to change it for the better and get it, correct the course when, I think a lot of folks are just like, fuck it, let's jump off the ship. So keep fighting the good fight. Remember, it's your life, it's your safety and protection, it's your responsibility. You guys stay safe, and we'll see you next week. Thanks a lot for joining us.